civilization, on the contrary, made it its chief aim to minimize the incidence and disaster of war. For this purpose, it limited the military obligation to the small class who, by their birth, nature, and traditions, were marked out for this function and found in it their natural means of self development through the flowering of the soul in the qualities of courage, discipline, force, strong helpfulness, and chivalrous nobility, for which the warrior's life pursued under the stress of a high ideal gives a field and opportunity. The rest of the community was in every way guarded from slaughter and outrage. Their life and occupations were as little interfered with as possible, and the combative and destructive tendencies of human nature were given a restricted field, confined in a sort of list, so as to do the minimum amount of harm to the general life of the race, while at the same time, by being subjected to high ethical ideals and every possible rule of humanity and chivalry, the function of war was obliged to help in ennobling and elevating instead of brutalizing those who performed it. It must be remembered that it is war of this kind and under these conditions that the Gita had in view. War considered as an inevitable part of human life, but so restricted and regulated as to serve, like other activities, the ethical and spiritual development, which was then regarded as the whole real object of life. War destructive within certain carefully fixed limits of the bodily life of individual men, but constructive of their inner life and of the ethical elevation of the race. That war in the past has, when subjected to an ideal, help in this elevation, as in the development of knighthood and chivalry. The Indian ideal of the Kshatriya, the Japanese ideal of the samurai, can only be denied by the fanatics of pacifism. What it has fulfilled its When it has fulfilled its function, it may well disappear, or if it tries to survive its utility, it will appear as an unrelieved brutality of violence, stripped of its ideal and constructive aspects, and will be rejected by the progressive mind of humanity. But its past service to the race must be admitted in any reasonable view of our evolution.
Big para and many interesting suggestions and statements also. We have to bring out the full meaning of the statements that we're making. Look at the last one. But its past service to the race must be admitted in any reasonable view of the evolution. You have to admit that war is a necessary element in life. Okay, he's making a fantastic statement, and he is the opposite of the pacifists. Okay, so they're saying the fanatics of pacifism, those who think that ahimsa is the ultimate principle of life, they are fanatics. They don't realize the reality. Okay, so we'll start reading the from the beginning. Indian civilization, on the contrary. So, what has he said in the previous para? He has told you that war, as such, in India and in Europe, he has made a distinction. In India, it was restricted only to the Kshatriyas, and it was specifically made between Kshatriyas and Kshatriyas, but not the common man. Whereas in Europe, it was not like that. But let us note also very honestly that even in Europe earlier, it used to be like that. The knights, okay, they used to fight it out one knight against the other knight, okay, with full armor and sitting on horses and charging at each other with lances. So it used to be like that. But then later on it changed, and in Europe war became general. The whole society had to be employed in the war, and that was necessary for them because there was such a small population, no? So they can't get a big army. Okay? So in China and in India, we have millions and millions, and everybody enlists for entering into the army because there is no job. So we have no problem at all with filling the army with. There is a problem with filling with officers in India, but not the common foot soldiers. There are huge number of applications that come. So this is what Sanjay is contrasting, and he is showing you the advantage and the disadvantage of both. The disadvantage in Europe was that war was destructive of society. Everybody, painters, artists, intellectuals had to go to war. And if they are destroyed, what will happen to the culture of the country? Okay. That was the disadvantage. But the advantage was also, he says, in Europe, that there was a sense of unity that was created for a common purpose. Intellectuals and cleaners and everybody, businessmen, they all felt a common cause when they were fighting for a war in their country. So that was the advantage and the disadvantage. In India also, the advantage and disadvantage was there. The advantage was that society was left without any damage. No? Only the Kshatriyas are fighting among themselves. The rest of the society, the Brahmins and the Vaishyas, they were not, and the Shudras, they were not affected at all by. So this is what he's saying. Now he is coming to the Indian civilization. So Indian civilization, on the contrary, made it its chief aim to minimize the incidents and disaster of war. How? By restricting it only to the Kshatriyas. My computer was playing games. That's why I stopped. Okay. So, Indian civilization, on the contrary, made it its chief aim to minimize the incidents and disaster of war. It was left to only the Kshatriyas to fight it out. For this purpose, you remember also even in the Mahabharata, okay, Duryodhana and Bhim have to fight it out, wrestle it out. Okay, it is limited only to a very small group. Either it could be the group of the Kshatriyas or even sometimes individuals. Okay, so that the rest of the society is not affected. For this purpose, it limited the military obligation to the small class who, by their birth, nature, and traditions, so imagine, just see, by birth, nature, and tradition. Birth, because it depends on your nature. If you are born to any caste, but if your nature is that of a warrior, then you become a Kshatriya. So it is not hereditary at all. Okay? Now note that. And traditions also were marked out for this function and found in it their natural means of self-development through the flowering of the soul in the qualities of courage, disciplined force, strong helpfulness, and chivalrous nobility, for which the warrior's life pursued under the stress of a high ideal gives the field and opportunities. This sentence is very interesting because he is saying that it's not only the Brahmins who can develop there and develop the soul and reach the goal of life. He is saying that all, he is not mentioning the Vaishyas and the Shudras, but even there, okay, each one can find the divine in whatever their nature is. That's what he says elsewhere. Here he is limiting it only to the Kshatriya class because he is discussing. And what are the qualities of the Kshatriya? Courage, disciplined force, strong helpfulness, and chivalrous nobility, for which the warrior's life pursued under the stress of a high ideal, and that high ideal for the Kshatriya. The ideal for each one differed, gives a field and opportunities. What are the qualities of the Brahmin? They leaning towards knowledge, towards truth, towards oneness. What about the qualities of the Vaishya? The qualities of the Vaishya are wealth, splendor, beauty, okay, opulence, not poverty, not meanness, not smallness, but largeness. That was the qualities of the Vaishya. And also charity and generosity, spreading prosperity everywhere. And the Shudra, loyalty, humility, service. Okay, it has, that also is a very necessary element in human life. Okay? You must be humble. You must be able to serve. Okay? So, in fact, I just mentioned one thing which Ramzo says in the record of yoga. He says, I must be able to combine mastery, Aishwaryam. I must be the master of everything. But also I must achieve dasyam. I must also be the servant of God. So just see, each one, whatever is nature, has a full right to reach the divine. Here he is discussing only the qualities of the Kshatriya. Okay. Now, I continue with the rest of the text. The rest of the community, I am reading from there. The rest of the community was in every way guarded from slaughter and outrage. That was in India. Okay, their life and occupations were as little interfered with as possible, and the combative and destructive tendencies of human nature were given a restricted field. The ideal of the Kshatriya is fine, but it could very easily deteriorate and go down to a combative and destructive tendency, because when you are using violence, it's not easy to be absolutely calm and quiet and still destroy. When you are destroying, a little bit of destructive tendency is likely to come in. Hate can come in quite easily. Okay, but the Kshatriya is not supposed to do that. Kshatriya is supposed to be absolutely calm, peaceful, and continue with his profession of guarding the poor, guarding the those who are to be protected, and also killing those who are disturbing the peace. That's not easy. So that's why Shendra is saying combative and destructive tendencies also come into human nature, but they have to be restricted to a very restricted field, confined in a sort of lists. Now, the word list is in English as well as in Sanskrit, one word has got so many meanings. Here, the word list means an enclosed area where a tournament used to take place, and that tournament was usually between knights. Okay, knights means the Kshatriya class in the English tradition. Okay, you have full armor and you sit on a horse. Okay, with metal armor, you are guarded, and with a lance, you charge at the other one. That was the tournament that they used to have. Lists. Okay, list is the enclosed area. Okay, for tournaments. That's the word list. So confined in a sort of lists. Why same saying in a sort of, because it can be physical, but here in India it was not physical. It was more psychological, if you want. It is enclosed. It is restricted only to the Kshatriya class. That's why using the word in a sort of lists, not physical, but psychological, if you want. So as to do the minimum amount of harm to the general life of the race. So while at the same time, by being subjected to high ethical ideals and every possible rule of humanity and chivalry, the function of war was obliged to help in ennobling and elevating instead of brutalizing those who performed it. So, and this is the thing. So, it must be remembered, okay, it was giving full right of destruction and taking of life only to the Kshatriyas, and that also with the right attitude. But that right attitude does not always come. That's why you use the word combative and destructive tendencies. It must be remembered that it is war of this kind and under these conditions that the Gita had in view. He is mentioning this very clearly because there are many people in the West who completely misunderstand the Gita. There is this famous Wendy Doniger who is supposed to have a PhD in Indology. Okay? She has got a PhD in Indology and she finds salt with Ganesh with a elephant's trunk on his face. What sort of religion is this? And also, the Gita is a manual for war. You are teaching Arjuna to kill. That's what they don't understand at all. So, Surendra is making it very clear that it must be remembered there is war of this kind and under these conditions that the Gita had in view. War considered as an inevitable part of human life, but so restricted and regulated as to serve, like other activities, the ethical and spiritual development which was then regarded as a whole real object of life. Now, this is very interesting because violence is supposed to be the opposite of spirituality. Spirituality is supposed to be calm, merciful, peaceful, okay, compassionate, okay. But that's not that's a one-sided view of life. There is also the force of the divine, but that force we confuse because we think that force necessarily must be hate and rancor and anger, but it's not true at all. Okay. So that's what is being pointed out. This distinction must be made very clearly in our own minds, right? So it is. That's why Sridhar is mentioning very clearly. Gita does not advocate war, but it is saying that it is this kind of war when it is restricted, and you must recognize that violence is a fact of life. Remember the dualities. If there is peace, there is also violence. It is there, not only in man, but even in nature. No? Nature is constantly constructing, but it also destroys. A volcano destroys, and the fire comes and finish off a whole an island or whatever. It happened so many times, no? Krakatoa, when it burst, it created hell, absolutely. But then what happens? This lava that is coming out of the volcano starts building an island in the sea, and soon, within a very short time, there is life that comes up. So, destruction and construction, okay, building and destroying are all together in nature. How can you stress only one aspect and not the other aspect? That's what Sridhar is pointing out. Both the ways have to be seen. Okay? So that's exactly what he's saying. Both have to be seen. The idea that Sridhar is using the word pacifist. Okay? Ahimsa. Ahimsa is certainly an element in life. There is no doubt about it. But it should not be carried to its extreme limit. Then it becomes it becomes an imperfection. Suppose a mosquito kills you, bites you, you are allowed to kill it, okay? Not in some religions. And when a tiger comes to attack you, are you not going to kill it? So you must be very realistic also. That's what Sam is being pointing out. Okay, so war considered as an inevitable part of life, but so restricted and regulated as to serve, like other activities, the ethical and spiritual development, which was then regarded as the whole real object of life. The whole real object of life, spiritual development. Is it restricted only to the Brahmin? No. Each of these, whatever your nature, you can have, the real object of life can be fulfilled. Whether you are knowledge oriented, whether you are war oriented, whether you are splendor and wealth oriented, or you are oriented only towards service and humility, everything can be achieved. Okay, so, carefully fixed by the bodily life of individual men, but constructive of their inner life and the ethical elevation of the race. That war in the past has, when subjected to an ideal, helped in this elevation. Also, the Kshatriya, although you may be engaged in war and killing, does it not develop bravery in you, chivalry? These are the ideals of the Kshatriya. So you must keep in mind this thing. Never go only to one-sided truths. One-sided truths can become untruths also. That's what said this matter. So that war in the past, when subjected to an ideal, helped in this elevation, as in the development of knighthood. Now he is mentioning the knights in Europe, okay? The knighthood and chivalry. The Indian ideal of the Kshatriya, the Japanese ideal of the samurai. He is mentioning, so this is common to all humanity. It's not only in India, but everywhere the idea was there. That war being a necessary element, it has to be recognized, not only in Japan, in Europe, as well as in India. Okay? Now, the Indian ideal of the Kshatriya, the Japanese ideal of the samurai can only be denied by the fanatics of pacifism. Okay? When you become a fanatic of pacifism and you say only that is the truth, you are a fanatic. You are not being realistic. When it has fulfilled its function, it may well disappear. So Sridhar is agreeing that war will disappear one day. Disappear where? From the world? No. It will disappear from the supramental race. In the supramental, he has discussed this in the last chapter of the Life Divine. Okay? The Divine Life. 60 pages. And there he discusses what are the things that will disappear in the supramental race. One of the things that is definitely war. Okay? War will disappear because disharmony cannot be there. But it's very interesting question. So, war can be extreme, like in modern war, okay? But there can be wrestling, There can be boxing, okay? There can be fencing with full. There also there is opposition and fight, okay? What about, can it become even subtler? What about competition? Competition between nations, that also is a sort of war because you are trying to have an opponent with whom you are doing. So it's very subtle. Playing of volleyball or playing of cricket, will these things also disappear? These things we have discussed in the life divine. In the subtlest form, competition may not disappear. It's not necessary because competition can be done in a spirit of friendliness and also of perfection. Each one is trying to perfect his own play. So it's a very interesting question that how war becomes subtler and subtler and gets replaced by only competition and emulation. Okay, so they are all very interesting questions raised by in these chapters of war. Okay. Then when it has fulfilled its function, it may well disappear. He's saying war in its most gross elements will disappear. Just like in music also, the worst forms of music will disappear. But the subtler forms and the more beautiful forms of music will remain. Exactly in the same way, entertainment also. Okay. The grossest of entertainment will disappear. But subtle entertainment, refined entertainment will certainly remain, even in the supramental race. So, when it has fulfilled its function, it may well disappear. For if it tries to survive its utility, it will appear as an unrelieved brutality of violence, stripped of its ideal and constructive aspects, and will be rejected by the progressive mind of humanity. Already it is trying to reject by you are trying to reduce the atrocities of war by banning the misbehavior with prisoners, number one. Then telling you not to use gas in war, number two. Telling you not to plant landmines. After 50 years of the war, also farmers will get hit. So all these things already there is an attempt to mitigate the disasters of war, but it has not yet disappeared, and it will not disappear, Srimata says, until it has fulfilled its function. When you can go beyond that, then it will go. Okay? So it will appear as an unrelieved brutality of violence, stripped of its ideal and constructive aspects. Even violence has got its constructive aspects and will be rejected by the progressive mind of humanity. But its past service to the race must be admitted in any reasonable view of our evolution. Very clear, fantastic, categorical statement. You cannot ignore violence and war. You can decry, you can criticize anger, rancor, and hate. But war can be devoid of these things. That's what is pointing out. Beautiful para. Okay? So, we have got enough time. We can read the next one. Yeah. Yeah. Please do that. The physical fact of war.
The physical fact of war, however, is only a special and outward manifestation of a general principle in life, and Kshatriya is only the outward manifestation and type of general characteristic necessary to the complementness of human perfection. War typifies and embodies physically the aspects of battle and struggle which belongs to all life, both to our inner and our outer living, in a world whose method is a meeting and wrestling of forces, which progress by mutual destruction towards a continually changing adjustment, expressive of a progressive, harmonizing, and hopeful of a perfect harmony based upon some yet ungrasped potentiality of oneness. The Kshatriya is a type of embodiment of the fighter in a man who accepts this principle in life and faces it as a warrior striving towards mastery, not shrinking from the destruction of bodies and forms, but through it all aiming at the realization of some principle of right, justice, law, which shall be the basis of the harmony towards which the struggle tends. The Gita accepts this aspect of world energy and the physical fact of war, which embodies it, and it addresses itself to the man of action, the striver and fighter, the Kshatriya. War, which is the extreme contradiction of the soul's high aspiration to peace within and harmlessness without soul's high aspiration, without the striver and fighter, whose necessary turmoil of struggle and action seem to be very contradiction of the soul's high ideal of calm mastery and self-possession, and it seeks for an issue from the contradiction, a point at which it terms meet, and a poise which shall be the first essential basis of harmony and transcendence.
Okay. Half a page para, interesting, and is continuing the discussion. We will go back to the beginning of the para. The physical fact of war, however, is only a special and outward manifestation of a general principle in life. And a Kshatriya is only the outward manifestation and type of a general characteristic necessary to the completeness of human perfection. So, human perfection, okay, if you consider, I'm going to expand a little on this idea. Suppose you are a perfection and you are told you must be gentle, you must be calm, you must be very, very merciful, you must be able to pardon those who are criticizing you or doing something against you, you must be very, very tolerant. All this is fine. But is that enough? So simply saying, completeness of human perfection includes also the opposite. The capacity to protect yourself, the capacity to deny those who are trying to do harm to you, the capacity to even fight them and eliminate the difficulties. So these are also parts of life. So not only gentleness, but also firmness and the capacity to counter those which are harmful to you. Because in the physical world, there is good and there is also bad. So good you have to accept, but bad you have to reject. And there you need force. So completeness of human perfection includes both gentleness as well as force. But this force must not, as we keep repeating again and again, this force must not include anger and hate. It must not be there. It sounds almost impossible, but it is possible. Very difficult, but it's possible. So that's what Sharma is saying. The general principle of life in the Kshatriya is only one aspect of that. The gentle person, okay, he is representative of the one side of human nature. And the Kshatriya is the other side of human nature. Both are necessary. That's what he is pointing out. I go to the next sentence. War typifies and embodies physically the aspect of battle and struggle which belongs to all life. Note that. Okay? All life has got all these dualities. This is, you can also relate this discussion that we are having to dualities. In the physical world, dualities are there, and we keep repeating that all the dualities are valid. Okay? They are valid, they have to be used. Okay? All the opposites, light and darkness, hot and cold, okay? Depending on the circumstances, you have to use both. It's very simple. Okay, in summer you use cold water, in winter you use hot water. Everything has to be used. Everything has got a purpose. So all those things also which seem to you negative, they have a purpose in life. So that's what he's saying. Which belongs to all life. War typifies and embodies physically the aspect of battle and struggle which belongs to all life. Even when there's no war, in your life you will encounter problems where you have to use force. Okay? As we said very clearly, I am walking in the street and a mad dog attacks me. I have to protect myself. Okay? Or an animal hits you, attacks you. You have to protect yourself. Okay? So that's what he's saying. That force also is necessary. Because this aspect of force belongs to all life, both to our inner and outer living. So, in the inner, you have to fight your own limitation. That also requires battle. Okay, I have hate in me. I have selfishness in me. I have to kill them. Okay, so that also is subtle. It's psychological, but also physical. That's what he's pointing out. Okay, so in a world whose method is a meeting and wrestling of forces. No, in the world there are dualities. It's a meeting and wrestling of forces. In fact, even science recognizes that. Science says to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay? So, every time you make a decision, there will be 100,000 people who will counter you with that the opposite. That's why in democracy you have so much of chaos. Okay. Very rarely is there any absolute harmony. It doesn't happen. Okay. So, so by meeting and wrestling of forces which progress by mutual destruction. Note that even mutual destruction also can give you progress because the wrong attitudes of both the aspects are being killed. So you progress towards a continually changing adjustment expressive of a progressive harmonizing and hopeful of a perfect harmony based upon some yet ungrasped potentiality of oneness. Harmony has not yet been established, but through war and through struggle, that oneness will be achieved one day. That's what Shabda is saying. Okay? Ungrasped potential, it has not yet been grasped of oneness. The Kshatriya is the type and embodiment of the fighter in man who accepts this principle in life and faces it as a warrior, striving towards mastery, not shrinking from the destruction of bodies and forms, but through it all, aiming at the realization of some principle of right. These are all the qualities of the Kshatriya. The principle of right, okay, that which is right, that which is just, justice, and law. There has to be law, which shall be the basis of the harmony towards which this struggle tends. Note interestingly also that how Sri Aurobindo during the freedom struggle, okay, he said, I have no objection to fighting the British even with arms, whereas we are told that no, we can achieve freedom through ahimsa. That is a very doubtful proposition, okay? Because even the British admitted that afterwards, that ahimsa did not give you freedom. It was the threat of the army revolting because of the actions of Subhash Chandra Bose that this happened. Okay, the army revolted, and strangely enough, you may know history or you may not know history, but in 1960, when the whole naval in Bombay, they 1860, that the first war of independence, there was a revolt. But you know what? Not only that, sorry, much later, okay, much later in the 20th century, there was a revolt in Bombay. And the Congress party told them not to do that, okay, because the principle of ahimsa had become the chief thing. Okay, so that is again taking, that's where they're using the word fanatics of pacifism. Okay, so now he's saying the Gita accepts this aspect of the world energy. The Gita accepts this aspect of the world energy. What is that? Force, violence. It has got its own place. And the physical fact of war which embodies it, and it addresses itself to the man of action, the striver, the fighter, the Kshatriya. War, which is the extreme contradiction of the soul's high aspiration to peace within and harmlessness. He has got a footnote for harmlessness, ahimsa, without. Ahimsa, without. The striver, without means in the physical world. The striver and fighter, whose necessary turmoil of struggle and action seems to be the very contradiction of the soul's high ideal of calm, mastery, and self-possession. So, is that really, because then they use the word seems, okay? It is not at all contradictory. You can use violence also with absolute calm and calmness. It's possible. Imagine Durga killing the Asura, do you think there is anger and hatred? No, certainly not. It is something that has to be done and it does it. She does it. And it seeks for an issue from the contradiction. The Gita is saying seeking for an issue, seeking for a solution from the contradiction, a point at which its terms meet. What are the terms? Violence and gentleness. Okay, harmlessness and peace and violence, war. These are the two which have to meet, and you have to find a solution for the harmony between the two. Is that possible? Yes, it is possible. That is Srimdo's whole idea. No? Don't run away from the physical world. Remain in the physical world and fight and conquer all the difficulties and harmonize everything. All the dualities have to be harmonized. As I told you just now, Aishwaryam and Dasyam, they are opposites, but they have to be harmonized. Light in the higher spiritual life is fine, but action and seeing the opposite of that in the physical world also is the divine. You have to also do that. That's Sritu's integral philosophy. Don't lay stress only on one aspect. You have to understand the necessity of all the aspects. That's why Srivamda does not reject the physical world. Okay. He harmonizes it with the two. His famous sentence, or rather phrase, marrying the soil to the sky. That's what you have to do. Okay, so and it seeks for an issue from the contradiction, a point at which its terms meet the terms of the contradiction, meet and a poise which shall be the first essential basis of harmony and transcendence. So you can see how it is always being, it is coming back to Srimdo's whole idea of not rejecting the physical world with all its imperfections. Take all these things and transform them. Take war, eliminate the anger and the hate. Okay? And then it has got a purpose in life. So we have got time. We have got 12 minutes or 11 minutes. So we'll read the next one. Man meets the battle of life. It's quite big, but we can read it. So any one of you, maybe Tarika, Shilpa has read, Yasmin also is there. Quickly, let's read.
Actually,
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't read.
Hello, who is going to read?
I can't read.
No, acha, okay. Then
I will,
Yasmin can read, or Sunki also can read.
yes, I will read.
Okay, Sunki, read.
Mhm.
Man meets the battle of life.
Yes. Man meets the battle of life in the manner most consonant with the essential quality, most dominant in its nature. There, there are, according to the Shankya philosophy, accepted in this respect by the Gita, three essential qualities or modes of the world energy, and therefore also of human nature, sattva, the mode of poise, knowledge and satisfaction, rasa, the mode of passion, action, and struggling emotion. Tamas, the mode of ignorance and inertia. Dominated by tamas, man does not so much meet the rush and shock of the world energies whirling about him, and converging upon him as he succumbs to them, is overborne by them, afflicted, subjected, or at the most helped by the other qualities. The tamasic man seeks only somehow to survive, to subsist so long as he may, to shelter himself in the fortress of an established routine of thought and action, in which he feels himself to a certain extent protected from the battle, able to reject the demand which his higher nature makes upon him, excused from accepting the necessity of a further struggle and the ideal of an increasing effort and mastery. Dominated by Rajas, man flings himself into the battle and attempts to use the struggle of forces for his own egoistic benefit to slay, conquer, dominate, enjoy. Or, helped by a certain measure of the sattvic quality, the Rajasic man makes the struggle itself a means of increasing inner mastery, joy, power, possession. The power The battle of life becomes his delight and passion, partly for its own sake, for the pleasure of activity and the sense of power, partly as a means of his increase and natural self-development. Dominated by sattva, man seeks in the midst of the strife for the principle of law, right, poise, harmony, peace, satisfaction. The purely sattvic man tends to see this within, whether for himself alone or with an impulse to communicate it when one to other human minds, but usually by a sort of inner detachment from or else an outer rejection of the strife and turmoil of the active world energy. But if the sattvic mind accepts partly the rajasic impulse, it seeks rather to impose this pose and harmony upon the struggle and apparent chaos to vindicate a victory for peace, love, and harmony over the principle of war, discord, and struggle. All the at, all the attitudes adopted by the human mind towards the problem of life either either derive from the domination of one or other of these qualities or else from an attempt at balance and harmony between them.
Okay, so he is very interestingly discussing here. We have only 2 minutes left. We can't discuss it today. We'll discuss it next Saturday. But he is discussing because there are three levels. Man is not only in one level. He is at a tamasic level. He is at a sattvic level. He is also at a rajasic level. And each one is taking and analyzing and seeing how it is applicable to war. Okay, and the violence, question of violence. So we'll do this next time. Okay. So today we stop here, and next time we'll end. So